Thanks, Premier. Certainly numbers are continuing to trend in the right direction. Single figures are hopefully numbers that we can expect ongoing into next week, and even lower. The vast majority of cases now linked to known outbreaks, so either in aged care or some of our other active outbreaks. It's important to note that those outbreaks still have complexities to them. All of those workers who pick up the virus, they will have family members. Those family members work in other essential industries, have needed to move, some of whom have become positive, some of whom are therefore infectious in the 2 days before they develop symptoms whilst at work. And so the rules that are in place, and which include masks, are for those absolutely important times when someone is infectious but doesn't have symptoms. And that's why they're an important rule for people, even outside. I've said many times, outside is less of a risk than inside. I don't want people not to enjoy being outside for their 2 hours of exercise within 5 kilometres of their home. Of course people can go to the beach, but I was concerned, as the Premier is, as the Commissioner is, about the fact that people stopped wearing masks, didn't keep physical distancing. Yes, you can be with your household of whatever size, or you can be with 4 other people from up to 2 households. They're rules that apply to keep all of us safe and to continue this trend down to extremely low numbers, with the objective that we have of no community transmission whatsoever, so that we can go out to the beach right through summer with much more confidence about how that summer will be, how the next year will be, and not have to worry about our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, as we have over 800 deaths, mostly in elderly people. So the rules are important. They're not easy. It's been a very, very long haul. Many people are fatigued by it, but if the numbers today and the numbers in recent days aren't proof positive that they're exactly the things that have gotten us to this point, I don't know what is. So I would absolutely urge people to stick to it for this little bit longer. Happy to take questions.
What did you think when you saw images of what was happening?
Look, I understand people's desire to be out, and all of the things that we enjoy about the outside and a bit of sunshine after a very long winter. I understand that human desire, no question. But it is not a huge sacrifice to stick to those rules about wearing a mask, about sticking to the numbers in the groups that you have, and distancing from those other groups. I've seen it on the way home yesterday in different parks, catching the train, where there were small groups of people. They wore masks, they were on their picnic rugs, and they were doing the right thing. And it was really great to see that. Lots and lots of people are following the rules. And as the Premier said, it's a bit of an insult to everyone who's done it tough for months and months and months across the state, for some people to be putting all our gains at risk. It is due to the fantastic sacrifices of everyone that we're at this point that we're at. So yeah, it makes me angry as well to see some people breaking the rules. I do understand the pressures. I do understand that people want more of a normal life, but that's what we're heading to, and this jeopardises it rather than sets us on the right path.
Of all the public gatherings we've seen last night, that seemed to be the most extreme. There were people, like our crew had its camera kissed, our journo was kissed by strangers. Compare that to the other things we've seen, the protests, the protests in the city that were very socially distant. This is extreme.
Yeah, it's been a long haul, and sunny days certainly bring some effervescence to people. That's again not unexpected. But as I said in my tweet, the sacrifices we make now, the stuff that we can hold back right now, make a huge difference. Europe will be wearing masks for the foreseeable future, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. We can move to a point where we don't have to wear masks all the time, certainly outdoors. We're not there yet, but we're very close. And so just have some reflections on the fortunate situation that Victoria and Australia at large is in, because we are at a point where we can get to a much, much more normal way of life as the UK locks down, as Spain and France and Italy increase their restrictions across the board. We're heading in a very different direction, but it's a fragile direction because everyone has to do the right thing to get there.
You've spoken a lot about the public health messaging and the challenges getting the message across to various groups. Is enough being done to not only get the message across, but encourage people to keep following the message? Is there more that can be done in that area?
Oh, I think we're always trying. We're always trying to find whatever way that message can penetrate and connect with people. It's not an easy task after months and months. I'm at the 8-month mark for my work in this space. It is exhausting for everyone, but I think if there's any message now, it's that the light at the end of the tunnel is really apparent. That single figures are single figures. We couldn't have dreamed of it 2 months ago, and I would remind people that there are countries now that are like India that are seeing 90,000 cases a day, 1,000 deaths a day, and that much of Europe, much of North America, and many places in Asia are going to see that for the foreseeable future. And this is a golden opportunity for us in Victoria. Not every country has the opportunity to be an island state that can cease international travel, have quarantine for everyone who comes to the country, and get to a point where they can effectively stop community transmission. We have that opportunity. We are not there yet, but we have that opportunity. So I would say through all the tough stuff that we've gone through, we have a greater advantage compared to so many other places in the world, and we should grab that advantage with both hands by just hanging on a bit longer.
But is there an opportunity, I guess, to work with community groups who work with young people or people who might need just reminding? Is there more that can be done to work with groups to remind people about
Look, that's all happening. There is intensive work from a community engagement perspective, and the community engagement and testing team, where that kind of gets bundled together, are very much focused on both the behaviours but also to make sure that people come forward for testing, because that is a significant part of the solution. Finding cases, ending these last few chains of transmission will get us there.
Do you think it's worth...
I want to just add to that if I can.
Princeton View is an aged care home, I think, in Brighton, where one of the residents has been locked up for 45 days, even though I don't think there's a particular outbreak. There have been cases there. Is that an acceptable way to treat any human being, particularly an elderly or frail person?
Well, there's no public health direction. There's no direction from me that says that people can't leave their rooms at all for that period of time. A single case, though, in an aged care facility is an outbreak, and movements have to be restricted. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person in that facility can't leave their room at any time. And as I say, there's no constraint from Victorian government side in terms of how that operates. I think it's really important that people get an opportunity to move about if they're not cases. And if they're cases, they're going to be cases for 10 days or less, but most people recover within a 10-day period. And if you've been a case and you've recovered, then you're not infectious to anyone. It shouldn't be an issue for you to move about. But it would really be for the facility management to speak to how they've gone about that. But there's certainly no public health direction that says you can't move someone from their room at any point in time during an outbreak. And we've had long outbreaks. We've got outbreaks that have gone for 2 months or more in aged care. So that is a real challenge in terms of the restrictions that do need to be in place. You do have to minimise movement to the extent possible, otherwise there are just more people infected, there are more deaths that occur in those facilities. But you do have to balance the psychological, spiritual, needs of all of those residents right through that period and in normal times.
A month and a half sound a bit extreme to you?
It does. No one should have to be constrained for weeks and weeks on end without any opportunity to get out.
And yesterday we saw a few travel bubbles announced. We missed out, obviously. With your discussions with your interstate counterparts, when do you reckon we'll be part of a travel bubble?
I don't know that we've missed out. New Zealanders are free to come to Victoria. The question is what the requirements are on arrival in Australia, and so the travel bubble, as I understand it, is that there's no quarantine requirement for those coming from New Zealand because of the risk status of New Zealand. But Victoria's open, and we'll be at a point very soon where there won't be a concern about Victorians travelling, or indeed New Zealanders travelling and not having to quarantine on return.
Regional Victoria has 2 active cases. How far away are they from taking the next step in the roadmap?
I think we have to make sure that regional Victoria is moving in a certain synchrony with Metro Melbourne. So we need to get to a point where whatever we open up in regional Victoria isn't put at risk by also allowing people to move out of Metro Melbourne. So Metro Melbourne really needs to get to the point where the risk is so low that you can basically allow movement across the state, and the settings that are in place in regional Victoria at that time will be opened up. That means that as you allow more activity, more movement, larger gatherings of people, what you have to be sure about is that it doesn't get seeded by a case in Metro Melbourne. So, the answer to that is how well is Metro Melbourne doing over the next few weeks? But we are on track.
We have these police checks around Melbourne to stop people travelling between regional Melbourne. Is that not why we have those, so that regional...
Yeah, it's absolutely why we have them, but there are still thousands of people who travel for essential reasons and are permitted workers who go to regional Victoria. And so that's a risk. That's a risk while we've still got cases in Metro Melbourne. And we've got, fewer than 200, or very close to 241, but we'll certainly get to a point where the risk is so low that we can open up to regional Victoria properly.
So the message to regional Victorians is you have to wait for Melbourne now, pretty much.
Well, regional Victoria's always had to wait for Melbourne in the sense that the peak that they got to, over 500 cases, was from Metro Melbourne, and so we had to control it, and everything that has been achieved because of the control in Metro Melbourne, and everything that regional Victoria has done right. They're continuing to do all the right stuff, but it'll be reviewed as we review all our settings, and the 18th and 19th of October, when we're really going to be looking hard at where Metro Melbourne is at, regional Victoria will come into those considerations at the same time.
I was going to ask, if we get to that date, October 19, is that when you think regional could also take the next step?
I think there's an opportunity there. It's really hard to say. We do need to think about what the alternatives are. Do you maintain those travel restrictions and allow regional Victoria to do more, or do you open up those travel opportunities, which is again a significant advantage for regional Victoria in terms of business and tourism, but hold the restrictions in place a little bit more? Those are determinations for Crisis Council of Cabinet, with public health input, obviously.
Brett, I know you did touch on this earlier, but are the case numbers, we're in single digits, but is this where you want to be right now? Do you think is there a chance we can pop up again though?
Oh, of course there's a chance we can pop up. This is why sticking to our guns continuously until we can snuff this out is really important. I do think where I expected us to be, and we are tracking where the modelling suggests we should be, but I think my deputy Alan has spoken to the fact that an outbreak that can have really complex elements to it, where there's a big household, there are lots of people who are in multiple essential work settings, can explode, and so that can totally push things awry. But as we're tracking now, it's as expected, and I would always hope that it does better day by day. I think there are opportunities with very, very low numbers for you to understand all of the chains of transmission, follow up absolutely intensively all of the potential contacts, offer all of them all of the support that would help them to isolate or quarantine, and you can get to small numbers and then all of a sudden it's zero. That's what we're keeping our fingers crossed for. But as it is, we will continue to track with very low numbers, I expect.
7's a lot better than 700.
You bet it is.
Are there any new cases with the Chadstone cluster?
I believe the Chadstone cluster does have additional cases. Let me give you the exact number. There are 15 now linked. So they're 5 staff, 6 family members or household members of existing cases, and 2 customers of that club. And there are 2 further cases associated with a cafe that was just nearby. So I expect they're all linked. So essentially there are 17 cases now with that one event.
Can you tell us the name of the cafe, just for people who might be worried if they think?
Yeah, look, I think it's come up on our exposure site settings, which is on our DHHS website, but it's Jasper Coffee.
Jasper.
Yes.
Have you had any updates on, since you've been publishing those exposure sites, have you had updates on more people presenting from seeing those, picking up more cases?
Not necessarily. Obviously, we're getting good testing numbers, and those exposure sites are prompts for people to get tested wherever, but you don't necessarily know that they've gone to a testing site in a particular place because they've been to that exposure site as a casual contact. But the idea and the hope is certainly that it's prompting people to understand that there are transmission, there are risks, albeit relatively small in those areas. But even if they're a passerby, if they're a casual contact and they've developed symptoms, that they can get tested anywhere.
We had the trace of virus in sewage in Anglesea this week. Do you have any updates on how many people got tested there, whether there's any updates?
I don't have testing numbers, no. But you know, it was something like 20% of the Apollo Bay population came forward for testing. I think people have stood up very well in Anglesea as well, but I don't have the numbers for today.
Have we had any cases in Victoria of reinfection?
No, there are rare reports internationally. There might be 3 or 4 now. These are people who've been infected once, recovered, and then had another illness, been tested again, and been shown to have a genetically different strain. Some people have been tested and shown to be persistently positive. That can happen, you know, sometimes 4 weeks or 6 weeks after recovery, but it's the same virus, probably dead virus. But there are a few cases, just a handful of people who seem to be reinfected 3 or 4 months later with a different virus, some of whom have a mild illness, but worryingly some of whom have just as severe or more severe illness. So we have to keep an eye on that. It might be telling us that it's not easy to get lifetime immunity with this virus, and it means that we can't rely just on the arrival of a vaccine necessarily. A vaccine might be an absolutely fantastic vaccine that provides very, very high levels of protection, and you make the population, you provide herd immunity for the population with that vaccine, a so-called sterilising vaccine, because it gives you that full protection. But there are other vaccines that might just reduce the severity of illness, so give you some relative protection, but doesn't stop you getting infected. So we can't hang our hats on a vaccine being able to do the whole job for us, and those reinfections might be telling us that it's a bit of a complex story as to how immunity develops in people.
There was some talk this week, Brett, about the 5-kilometre rule, the restriction on movement. Do you think the scenes at the beach yesterday and as we come into the weekend kind of validate that rule?
Oh, there are lots of things that validate that rule, and it's the complex outbreaks that we've been following up right through this that tell us, yes, there are loads and loads of people who are motivated and will always do the right thing. And if you were to tell them it's now 7.5 kilometres, it's now 10 kilometres, that they would continue to do the right thing, and they would only visit that bubble house that they've established, or that single person bubble, or they would only go to exercise to those distances. But we know that there are other people who require that rule to be in place to be understood to do the right thing. And we saw in our second wave at the beginning that there was significant spillover from postcode to postcode to postcode, and the constraint of that 5K has really, through the stage 4 lockdown, has really meant that we can continue to shrink very significantly and not have this seeding across Metro Melbourne that might occur if you were to say, right, it's a 10K or it's a 20K limit now.
Brett, the town of Rochester, regional Victoria, has rolled out asymptomatic testing, encouraging all their residents to get tested. Is that something that could be or should be, or do you support that, and could it be replicated here in Melbourne?
So it's being replicated for high-risk industries. I think that's a reasonable thing that we can do now, both with the testing mobility and capacity that we've got to roll out. And those high-risk industries need to be really strongly protected. But it's a low-value intervention for people without symptoms with very, very low case numbers or no case numbers. So in regional Victoria, it's not going to have a good return on investment. And we've got sewage testing in lots and lots of places in regional Victoria. That's a good way to capture a population of 10,000, test them all in one catchment, sewage catchment, and show that it's negative. And if it turns up positive, then that can be the prompt, as it has been in Anglesea, to say there could be someone in your community and now's the time to get tested. I think we're done.
Any other issues? Very good. Thank you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.